Welcome everyone. In this series of previous year questions of sociology, today we'll discuss this question. How did the intellectual forces led to the emergence of sociology? Discuss 2020. It was a 10 marker. So in 2020, this question was asked and it's a 10 marker. First, we'll discuss the content of this question. Then we'll talk about what should be the structure, what should be the appropriate structure for the answer. So the question says, how did the intellectual forces led to the emergence of sociology? So when we talk about this emergence of sociology, so emergence of sociology has both intellectual and material basis. So in intellectual, we talk about ideas, the ideas that shaped modern times, especially about everything from urbanization to industrialization to the nature of art, nature of literature. So everything was shaped by this intellectual force. At the same time, some of the material changes like French Revolution, American War of Independence, then Industrial Revolution and other events uh, of Europe also shaped the nature of sociology, or the what should be the scope of the subject, and what would be the nature of this discipline. But the question is asking only about the intellectual forces which led to the emergence of sociology. So we'll not talk about this material forces like French Revolution or Industrial Revolution. So these will not be discussed. These will not be written in this answer. So coming to the question, so when we talk about intellectual forces, then first is Renaissance. So it talked about a new kind of modernity, ideological modernity. It decentered God from our social life and established human at the center of the social life. So new kind of art, new kind of sculptures, new kind of literature, all of these were produced in this time. And Renaissance was very important for decentering this idea of God from our social world or the analysis of social problems. So like poverty. So earlier poverty was seen as an act of God, or even in India we see it as a manifestation of bad karma in the last life. But Renaissance talked about scientific ideas, intellectual ideas. Then after Renaissance, we had Enlightenment. And Enlightenment talked about the spirit of science and scientific political philosophies. Scientific political philosophies like democracy, rule of law, separation of powers. So these were seen as scientific in the sense that these can provide us a rational way of organizing society, organizing power, and people will be benefited from these kind of social institutions. So these are the two main intellectual developments in Europe, and these led to the emergence of sociology. But in the answer, we'll not focus on Renaissance or Enlightenment as a specific period providing new kind of intellectual thoughts. Rather, we'll try to bring other ideas, like the ideas which were uh, compiled by scholars and seen as the intellectual forces. So M. Ginsberg says that there are four intellectual antecedents to the emergence of sociology. First is philosophy of history. Second is social survey. Social surveys were mainly done to bring social reforms in society, especially in European society of that time. Third is impact of evolutionary biology. And fourth is political philosophy. So M. Ginsberg says that these four are intellectual antecedents to the emergence of sociology in Europe. However, Bottomore says that these two are the most important antecedents which led to the birth of sociology. So what is philosophy of history? So philosophy of history was something new, emerged from Renaissance, Enlightenment. So all of these intellectual development led to the emergence of this new philosophy of history. So philosophy of history brought new ways to look at society or the social changes in European societies of that time, and they compared European society with primitive societies or tribal societies. And they said that tribal societies or primitive societies are the one where history starts. So history starts from primitive societies, then history progresses to modern societies. So they talked about the idea of progress and development. So they said that tomorrow is going to be better than tomorrow because tomorrow will have more material resources. Therefore, people's lives will be better. So history should be looked through this linear process of social change, where primitive society transforms into a complex society. Then they also talked about various stages in the development of these societies. And these thoughts were used by various political philosophers of that time, like Hegel. So Hegel said that the first social organization or social association is family, second is civil society, and third is state. Family is based on universal particularism. So a member of a family only thinks about the benefit of other members of that family. So universal, so particularism. Or it can be written as particular altruism. Then civil society, it's universal egoism. So someone is not selling food to satisfy other person's hunger, rather that person is selling food to gain profit. So that's universal egoism. And third is state, universal altruism. So Hegel says that we moved from particular altruism for the people whom we know or we are related, to altruism for everyone in the society. So these stages of development, or every society develops through some stages, and these stages are fixed, was given by this philosophy of science. Saint Simon also talked about critical society and organic society. So these thoughts inspired various sociologists, like Hegel's thought inspired Marx. So this was the second idea of philosophy of history. Then the third idea was, in the philosophy of history, earlier intellectuals looked at society as a part of political society or the state. So if you look into the writings of Aristotle, Plato, and other philosophers of pre-modern times, so they see society through this idea of a state, this idea of authority, and through this idea, they looked at other domains of our society. So politics or authority was central to any discussion of society. However, in philosophy of history, Adam Ferguson, he said that society should not be seen as only from emerging from authority. It has various parts, and these parts are interrelated. So whenever we have to study any society, we have to look into these parts, like market, authority, state, customs, laws, and all of these parts are interrelated. And these ideas inspired various sociologists later on, like Durkheim, Parsons, and others. So they also saw society as, functionalists also saw society as a web of interrelationship, and through which these societies function or remain in equilibrium. So this was the third idea about this philosophy of history. Then the second idea, intellectual antecedent is social survey. So in old society, various social problems were seen as individual problems. Like poverty. Poverty was seen as individual problem based on their karma, or based on their relationship with God, or a result of various natural events like disasters and other things. So it was an individual problem. It was not seen as social problem. But in modern times, poverty was seen as a social problem, because intellectuals felt that in industrial societies, poverty can be eradicated, and if a country is poor or if a society is poor, it means that the rule in that society or various institutions of that society are not in equilibrium. Therefore, we see poverty in many societies. Like Durkheim gave the concept of anomie. Means those societies are in transition, therefore we see these social problems. So first was social reform orientation, where these problems became social problems. Second was the idea that social reality should and could be studied like natural sciences, through the methods of natural sciences. Therefore, social phenomena can also be measured and classified. Can be measured and classified. Therefore, if you see any social phenomena like any idea of poverty, suicide, division of labor, alienation, so all of rationality, all of these ideas can be classified and measured. So we'll see later on in sociology, like Weber talks about 3 kinds of authority. Marx talks about different mode of productions. Durkheim talks about this idea of mechanical and organic solidarity. So through all these ideas, what these sociologists, later on sociologists are trying to do, they are trying to solve these social problems. So Comte will talk about a new kind of religion based on science, and that religion will create more harmony in society. So this was the idea of social survey. And it was very important at that time, because earlier these problems were seen as individual problems or an act of God. Now these things can be solved through people's initiative. So this was the second intellectual idea which led to the emergence of sociology, which we see in the works of Durkheim, Marx, Parsons, Weber, and other sociologists. Then third is biological evolutionary theory. So it also talked about societies developing in stages as organisms evolve. So society is seen as, in this idea, an organism. So therefore, like the evolution of organism, societies will also evolve, and there will be various stages of development. So like Durkheim talks about mechanical to organic solidarity. Marx talks about mode of productions from primitive communism to communist society, so through different mode of productions. So it was biological evolutionary theory. Then the last intellectual antecedent in this part is political philosophy. So in political philosophy, a new kind of social organization was imagined, and new systems of social institutions were created, like Montesquieu talked about separation of powers and said that if there is no separation of powers in a society, then in that society there will be loss of individual liberty. There will be dictatorship of any one organ of the state, and therefore there should be separation of powers. John Locke talked about three inalienable rights of individuals. Like, first he talked about right to liberty, then he talked about right to property, then right to personal freedom. So all these rights were given by John Locke, and Locke's idea inspired American War of Independence. Then Rousseau talked about people electing the sovereign. So there should be a social contract between masses and the state, and in this social contract, people should elect their leaders or select their leaders. And so this idea also led to new kind of political philosophy, new kind of organization. Voltaire talked about freedom of speech and expression. So various political philosophies emerged in that time, and through all these political philosophies, sociology became a discipline. However, in intellectual thoughts, there is one more idea which was very important at that time for the emergence of sociology. That is conservative reactions. Especially these reactions came after French Revolution, and conservatives means they believe in status quo. They say that God created the society, God created all of the things that we see around us. Therefore, humans have no right to change the social organization. Therefore, they will critique industrialization, they will critique urbanization, they will also say that we should not change the institutions of patriarchy, caste, or other kind of institutions. These are God-given institutions, and if humans are intervening to change these institutions, they are trying to change the holy design of society. But conservative brought two ideas, two important ideas in this. So two thinkers, de Bonald and de Maistre, they said that all of these intellectual thoughts, the four intellectual antecedents, were talking about rational ideas of our society. Like they are talking about democracy, they are talking about increasing the economic efficiency of any society. They are not talking about irrational ideas or subjective ideas, which are also very important for human society or for any society to flourish, to live happily. So they introduced irrational aspects of human life into this discussion of sociology. So like irrational aspect like tradition, religion, ritual, and emotion. So all of these ideas all of these ideas became part of sociology due to conservative reactions. Then second idea that was given by them was that society is in equilibrium, and if humans are trying to change any part of that society, there will be disturbances in the system. And these ideas were taken by functionalist scholars which led to the birth of sociology as a discipline. So in this answer, you have to talk about intellectual ideas, divide intellectual ideas into two types. So first, you'll write about introduction. In introduction, you'll say that sociology emerged as a distinct discipline in 19th century Europe due to various social changes. Write about some of these social changes like industrialization, urbanization, new kind of economic system, democracy, new kind of political system, democracy, citizenship rights, and all of these ideas. Then talk about intellectual ideas into two parts. First, the four intellectual antecedents given by M. Ginsberg, used Bottomer also, because Bottomer says that social survey and the philosophy of history were the most important intellectual changes that led to the emergence of sociology. Then come to conservative reactions. And conclude your answer by saying that all these intellectual ideas led to the emergence of this discipline of sociology, and sociologists are continuing with this debate between rationality and irrationality, this debate between the role of subjective ideas and the role of objective ideas. And through these ideas, sociology emerged as a new discipline in the 19th century. But give more space to this part, intellectual antecedents and conservative reactions. Okay, thank you.